Greetings and welcome to another episode of Sports 101, the show that discusses sports beyond the X's and O's. Here we expand our conversation into the history, past, present, as well as in the making, and we also look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I am your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media at Coach_Harp412, and you can get social with Sports 101 and the litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media as well. You can find SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Please remember we've expanded our lineup, and now we're on your favorite smart devices at home. You can go to Roku and search SportsZone Chicago and download the channel there as well. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is the world's only Black-owned sports talk app. You can watch and listen to my show, our flagship show, Sean and Mai in the Morning, and countless others. Please keep up with breaking sports news of your favorite team or region. If you miss something, don't worry about it. Just go to YouTube and search SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the page. But most importantly, after you do that, we need everyone, and I mean everyone, to download the SportsZone Chicago app. Remember, the SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores, while most recently being located on Roku on your favorite smart devices. Now I'd like to introduce you to this week's show. This week's show is titled Coming to America, the Francis Tiafoe story. Let me get my pictures up, excuse me. So here's our title picture right here. And if you watched the U.S. Open last week, you know Francis Tiafoe is a young man that stunned the world and almost made it to the final. Now, majority of people have seen the classic Eddie Murphy movie, Coming to America, which is one of my top 3 of all time. And that movie was about an African prince who came to America to find a wife who wanted him for himself and not for his riches. However, our Coming to America story is not about a prince, but it does tell the tale of a man and his family who immigrated from Sierra Leone in search of new beginnings. Remember, in last week's U.S. Open, Francis Tiafoe showed the world his prowess in tennis with his impressive play, and I'd like to let you take a look at some of those highlights right now in his match versus Rafael Nadal.
He's taking the first set.
6 games to 4.
Full focus, all in, no lapses.
Game double.
He got it! He got it running! And an ace finishes it! One set away from the biggest win of his career.
By 6 games to 4, Tiafoe leads by 2 sets to 1. Love forces. Tiafoe. 3 sets to 1. 6-4, 4-6, 6-4, 6-3.
Feel it, kid.
Then that video was brought to us from the U.S. Open and highlights from Cadillac. Francis Tiafoe defeated Rafael Nadal to advance to the quarterfinals of this year's U.S. Open. He strutted around the court, as you just saw, with a shirt over his face. Now, that was due to his being overcome with emotion, and tears of joy began to flow. Remember, Francis Tiafoe is only 24 years old, and recently he's been touted as the future of American tennis. Tiafoe has just defeated one of the greatest tennis players of all time, and his breakthrough victory was desperately searching for Tiafoe in his camp, and it finally arrived. Tiafoe then advanced to the semifinal, becoming the first Black American in the U.S. Open semifinal, since Arthur Ashe in 1972. Here's Arthur Ashe picture right here, and one of his Davis Cup trophies. Now, Tiafoe's run ended in the semifinal at the hands of Carlos Alcaraz in a 5-set thriller on Friday night. Now, Carlos Alcaraz also went on to win this year's U.S. Open. Following that loss, Tiafoe stood on the hard court and told the crowd and viewers at home he felt like he let everyone down, which the crowd responded with an overwhelming "No, you did not." And in fact, Tiafoe didn't let anyone down. From his early trainers at the Junior Tennis Champion Center to Maryland's head football coach, his hometown where he grew up in America, College Park, is proud of him, as well as all his family in Sierra Leone. Now, in the early 1900s, Tiafoe's parents immigrated from Sierra Leone, a West African nation embroiled in a bloody civil war, to College Park, Maryland, where Francis and his twin brother Franklin were born in 1998. Now, here's a picture of a map of West Africa, and you see Sierra Leone. This picture right here is right next to Liberia, and that's for strategic reasons. Sierra Leone and Liberia were both colonies started by former colonists or slave masters per se. Liberia was started by the United States of America, and their former enslaved Africans were took back there. And Sierra Leone was started by the British, where their former enslaved Africans that they got from different parts of the continent, including places in West Africa, were dropped off in Sierra Leone. So both countries were made after the Berlin. They were not after the Berlin Conference, but they were their borders were grafted out by the European colonists. Before this, they were part of a much larger area, and you can see those right there. Now, many parents who are not citizens, and this includes of all demographics and races, who come to this country employ this tactic as their children will be citizens of the United States, and in turn, they hope they will spawn greater opportunities for their family and or ethnic group. As citizens, they can go to education for free and get other benefits of citizenship. Now let's talk about the reason why Francis Tiafoe's parents had to leave Sierra Leone. The Sierra Leone Civil War. I'm going to start this off with a picture you should be familiar with. So this is a picture right here in 1961 where Sierra Leone gained its independence from Britain. And that woman in the middle is the late queen who just passed away, as Sierra Leone was one of her colonies. And again, you've heard a lot of comments the last couple of days about Britain returning the crown jewels and other things that they have stolen from different lands. And this is one pictorial example to see their relationship. Even though people are smiling in this picture, before this picture was taken, Britain had control of all the natural resources of Sierra Leone, while the original inhabitants did not. Therefore, they could not make any money or profit off of their own land. Now, in the years following the death of Sierra Leone's first prime minister in 1964, politics in the country were characterized by corruption, mismanagement, and electoral violence that led to a weak civil society. Remember, a lot of these countries have puppet presidents set up by the former European colonies who they pay to funnel the resources to them for little or no cost. And then when that elect either changes his mind or does something against what they want him to do, oftentimes he becomes assassinated. So again, they had a weak civil societies due to this. We have the night after they became independent, and this all led up to around 1991. So you had an entire generation of dissatisfied youth who were attracted again to the rebel message of the Revolutionary United Front, or RUF, and they have to join this organization. So in each type of war, you have two factions. You had the government or the European faction that was the individuals from Sierra Leone who sided with the colonial masters and didn't want any change to what was going on. Then you had the Revolutionary United Front, which is quote unquote for the people, and they were designed to get the resources back, kick the colonists out, and take control of the land fully. Remember, after independence, it was just kind of tongue in cheek because they still didn't get control of the natural resources, and you still had Britain and other European countries coming in and exploiting these resources. And again, all this is due to the European involvement in a fight by these European countries to take the natural resources out and then resell them without giving the people any money. Now, again, you had two different factions. You had one that didn't see they were stewards for the public, and they didn't want to use politics as a tool for personal gain and or to liberate their people. Then you had the other side that wanted to again have multiple political parties and get if it was independent, have their own country, do everything for themselves. So similar to Haiti, Western countries and the European allies, again, they seek heads of state that will comply to the demands that they ask for. And most of the times those demands are how many troops can we have on the ground? How much natural resources or ore can we mine from your country? And do we have to pay for it? Now, we may give you some money, but the rest of the people can't have any money. And just like I said, when these figureheads either change or go against, oftentimes they're assassinated. Then another one comes in. If you look at Haiti, there's a long line of that where they get presidents that are chosen by America and other European Union countries, but yet they don't do good for the people. Now, the eastern and southern districts in Sierra Leone, most notably the Kono and Kenema districts, are rich in alluvial diamonds and, more importantly, are easy to access by anyone with a shovel, sieve, or transport. So basically what they're saying is in Sierra Leone, you can go down by the river and any child with a shovel and a sieve, which is an instrument that you get sand or gravel in and shake it, and then the contents are seen at the bottom when you run it through water. So that's how plentiful the diamonds are in this area. Now we're going to check a quick video on quote unquote these blood diamonds and how they affected not only Sierra Leone but the world.
In 1991, Sierra Leone was plunged into a brutal 11-year civil war. It began as an uprising against a corrupt government, but quickly became a war about who would control the country's most important resource, diamonds. Arms and mercenaries for the warring sides were paid for in diamonds. The rebels had their mines, the government had its. The world came to know them as blood diamonds. Millions of innocent victims were caught in the crossfire. Tens of thousands were murdered or had their limbs hacked off. The war is over, but memories are long. Stories are still told as a testament to the dead and to heal the pain of the living.
The first attack na kono we dey awuledo ya na net yeri boom 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 boom. Then ground more come between they say, hey, then people then don't come, then they kill. They say they left nothing. Anybody they meet and they kill you. Then go all one one cool. Na water side then couch ya. Then one fire and ya. Now hold the gun. Now then put inside Land Rover. Then killer. Na road ya then killer. As we they take out, we say well a lot of fine place for a lot better. The Land Rover go turn behind the pankan. It can't work scatter. Now then say well now we not do nothing. But this man for na better, the whole town. We go kill on all, we go burn the whole house. So we say from. To my family all, papa, oh, mama, oh, piki, oh, my wife, oh, all. Go to Nyakba, then they be here we now. Motoka, when you hear in addition na motoka self, we don't hear and now. Pipi, nade. We all go inside bush. God, now they pull you in the hand no more. God.
Thank you so much. And again, that video was brought to us by Rees Delwani. If you look at the beginning parts of the video, you see children with hands cut off, and that was due to the colonial masters or former masters that were running diamond mines at that time. De Beers Diamonds was also involved in Sierra Leone for a good while, and if you didn't meet your quota, sometimes they would cut the children's hands off. So all this turmoil against the citizens led for the Sierra Leone individuals, young men, to start the Rebel United Front. Now, in purpose, they could have been good, however, but some of their tactics were appalling, such as using youth soldiers. You had kids killing grown men as well as children, getting these young men on drugs. They had something called brown. They would mix cocaine and gunpowder and snort that, so they would be up for days at a time. And things are ugly, but sometimes I guess to take control of your country, you have to do what you have to do. But I just hate the fact that so many children were corrupted in this process. Now, since the discovery in the early 1930s, diamonds have been critical in financing the continuing pattern of corruption and personal harassment at the expense of public services, institutions, as well as infrastructure, meaning the whole world is taking these diamonds and making millions of dollars, but the individual Sierra Leone have nothing. Now, the phenomenon where countries with an abundance of natural resources tend to nothingness, be characterized by lower levels of economic development, is known as a resource curse. And obviously, it's not a resource curse. It's, basically calling it is what it is. The former colonial masters stealing the land, stealing the natural resources. Now, the presence of diamonds in Sierra Leone invited and led to the civil war in a multitude of ways. First, the highly unequal benefits resulting from diamond mining made ordinary Sierra Leone citizens frustrated. So under the Stevens government, revenues from the National Diamond Mining Corporation, known as Dominico, so think of that as like AT&T per se, a national phone service company. This was their National Diamond Mining Corporation. Now, this was a joint government project with, of course, De Beers diamonds out of Europe, and they were used for the personal enrichment of Stevens and members of the government and certain business elite who were close to him, yet the regular public didn't get any of this. So even though it's a first world country and natural resources with things in the ground being worth millions of dollars, the citizens weren't able to capitalize that as the resources were getting stolen. Now, De Beers, due to public criticism, pulled out of this venture in 1984, but the government lost direct control of the diamond mining areas, as you saw in the video, that I don't want to use the word rebel front, but the forces that were against the European-led backers for the fight for Sierra Leone had control of their diamond mines, and then the government and the European backers had control of theirs. Now, by the late 1980s, almost all of Sierra Leone's diamonds were being smuggled and traded illicitly, with the revenues going directly to the hands of these private investors. So in this period, the diamond trade was dominated by Lebanese traders, and later there was a shift in favor on the part of the Momo government by Israelis with connections to the international diamond market. Now, obviously, you see in Sierra Leone with these wars, these young children getting all these semi-automatic and automatic weapons. How do you think they got them? Obviously, they're not involved with the government, so they're not getting them from the West. So these Israeli and other Middle Eastern factions would supply them with guns in exchange for diamonds to help fight, the United States and their allies. Now, the Momo made some efforts to reduce smuggling and corruption in the diamond mining sector, but he lacked the political clout to enforce the law. So even after the National Provisional Ruling Council, NPRC, they took power in 1992 with the goal of reducing corruption and returning revenues to the state, so then the state could pay the people. High-ranking members of the government sold diamonds for their personal gain and lived very extravagantly off the proceeds. Diamonds again also helped to arm the RUF rebels who used funds harvested from the diamond mines to purchase weapons and ammunition from neighboring African countries as well as Middle Eastern countries. Now, the most significant connection between the diamonds and the war is the presence of easily extractable diamonds provided an incentive for violence. So to maintain control of important mining districts like Kono, thousands of citizens were expelled and kept away from these important economic centers. So just like the young man was stating that his uncle was killed, oftentimes people, if you're hungry and you can't work, and I go outside my house and there's a stream 2 minutes from my front door where I can go get diamonds and sell them. If I get caught mining those diamonds by whatever group, either the government-backed group and its European allies, or the quote-unquote rebel group and its national allies, as well as allies from other neighboring countries, you can get killed because, they're trying to, again, control the area. So it was very hard time for the people in regards to, making money. And like I said, it's millions of dollars literally at your feet, but you can't pick it up, can't touch it, because if you go to sell it somewhere, even if you don't get caught mining it, where'd you get this from? What mine? That's our mine. You stole from us. Now the rebel front may try to kill you, or etc. Now, although diamonds were a significant motivation and sustaining factor, there were other means of profiting from the Sierra Leone Civil War. So, for instance, gold mining was prominent in some regions. So, again, a lot of these African countries, particularly in West and Central Africa, are rich with natural resources that no one else in the world has. So even more common was cash crop farming through the use of forced labor. So looting during the Sierra Leone Civil War did not just center on diamonds, but also included that of currency, in particular the U.S. dollar, household items, food, livestock, cars, as well as international aid shipments that were dropped. So for Sierra Leoneans who did not have access to arable land where they could farm, many joined the rebel cause as it was an opportunity to seize property through the use of deadly force and show animosity and opposition to the government and its European-backed allies. But the most important reason why the Civil War should not be entirely attributed to the conflict over the economic benefits is that the pre-war frustrations and grievances did not just concern that of the diamond sector. Remember, more than 20 years of poor governance after being independent, poverty and corruption led for people to want to rise up and make a change. So just like how the Bastille was stormed in France, the RUF and its individuals did the same thing. So for these reasons, many citizens fled the countries, and this is ironic. A lot of the citizens that fled Sierra Leone, they went to countries who were responsible for the conflict in the first place. So, for example, a lot of people fled to Britain, the United States, and Israel, and these are the main countries that either contributed money, either upfront or backhand, and also provided weapons to create the conflict and keep it moving forward. So basically, by doing those things right there, that was able to show how this conflict arose. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue on with the Francis Tiafo story. I'm Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101.
Please stop and listen, because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183. Do not delay. Act today, because time is of the essence. That's 773-580-7183. 773-580-7183.
See me. See me.
See me. See my dark skin and my kinky hair.
See me. Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my tan skin and my curly hair.
See me.
Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my face, wet with tears from years of oppression.
See my hands, weathered and worn from decades of pulling myself up through your society.
See my feet split from centuries of walking your delicate line.
See me.
See me.
See me.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
Welcome back. Again, I'm Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. We talk about the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective through the lens of history in the past, present, as well as in the making. Please get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. SportsZone Chicago will be found on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, we are now located on your favorite smart devices, so you can go to Roku and download SportsZone Chicago and watch anytime at home. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now, getting back to the Francis Tiafoe story, like many of these immigrants that come to America, Tiafoe's parents, again, came with little to nothing. His dad, Constant, got a job working as a construction worker on a site that was going to be a tennis center in PG County, right around the corner from the University of Maryland. Now, this area is home to a lot of immigrants from the Caribbean and West Africa. So if you ever down New Hampshire Avenue, they have a Caribbean market, and there's a lot of ethnic and cultural resemblances of these areas. So after being a construction worker and developing the facility, with him living so close, he was hired on as a maintenance man. So this structure was completed in 1999, and they kept Constant Tiafoe on as a custodian. Now, his wife, Alfina, worked as a nurse, which often required her to work throughout the night, leaving Francis and his brother with their father. So with him being a janitor, he worked long hours at the tennis center, so he converted a trainer's room office with 2 tables into a bedroom for the 3 to sleep in. So they had trainer room tables that doubled as bed, so they would push them together, and they would have one set for Francis and his brother, and his father would sleep on the other side. Now, just outside this quote-unquote office or sleeping environment was Francis Tiafoe's escape, the tennis court, where he saw rackets and balls, and that led him to soar to incredible heights. Now, Coach Akili currently serves as the Senior Director of Player Development at the JTCC, first came on board at the facility in 2000, when Francis was just 2 years old. Now, he developed a relationship with Francis's dad, Constant, and he became sort of a surrogate father to Francis. While his dad was working, he would teach him tennis, and Francis would hang around him and actually start training with some of the clients, and would pay thousands of dollars to come to this center, which is in, again, PG County is one of the largest counties in Maryland. So while there are some poorer parts, they do have larger parts with greater economic benefit. Now, Coach Akil said he just loved to have fun and play tennis, and he wanted to enjoy himself on a court. He also wanted to let everyone know that he was here, and he wanted to be a great tennis player. Now, tennis trainer Misha Kostanov remembered the day he met Francis, and this was in October of 2006, his first day on board as a coach at the JTCC. Now, he didn't have any kids to work with, so he paired Francis, who was just sitting around playing on his cellular or electronic device at 8 years old, and got him to play with one of his clients. Now, when Coach Konstanov started working with him, he recalled he didn't notice much of a difference in skill level from the clients that paid, thousands of dollars to work with him. Now, what eventually separated Francis from the other players was the 5 or 6 hours of work the young boy was putting in every day. Of course, because he, pretty much lived at the center. Now, Coach Konstanov paid for many of Francis' tournament fees, drove him around the tournaments, and paid for his gear because his parents, couldn't afford it. They were working to, make ends meet. Now, occasionally on the weekend, Tiafoe would stay at Konstanov's house if they were coming back from a tournament or headed somewhere far. Now, him and his coach, they traveled all across the country while he ascended throughout the tennis ranks, and he became one of the best youth tennis players in America. Now, Konstanov coached Tiafoe from the age of 8 to 17 before he would turn professional. Now, this is common, for the United States Tennis Association to step in when players turn pro and encourage them to hire a more established coach to help them, increase their ranks up the ladder, which garners more monetary support the higher your ranks. So when Tiafoe wins a big point or game in a match, he often pumps his right fist in the air, and you can see all the various wristbands that he wears. One He shows homage to the JTCC as well as the University of Maryland because it has a big M on it, which represents the University of Maryland. Now, Francis didn't attend the University of Maryland or any college like that, for that example, but as he never considered going because he turned pro at 17. But he grew up at just 5 minutes from the University of Maryland Stadium, and being so close and being a great athlete, he's developed a relationship with their head coach, Coach Mike Loxley, who's pictured right here. Francis goes to the center to train, get treatment, and also talks to the players as Coach Loxley, is one of his mentors. Now I'd like to talk about Francis Tiafoe and him being a new hope to the tennis world. So just like when Tiger Woods came out, you see an increase in the amount of African-American males playing tennis now, similar to when Serena and Venus hit the tennis world. But we've always had tennis clubs. So I want to show you a quick video on some of the early tennis clubs in some prominent locations, including Chicago, that encourage individuals of African descent to play this game of tennis.
As the 20th century approached, tennis's popularity among African American professionals was growing, in spite of its institutional obstacles. The racism that hindered Black opportunity in most facets of American life also existed in the tennis world. Black players facing exclusion from white-dominated tennis clubs began founding their own clubs in cities across America. Tennis played a key role in the growing sense of community the clubs offered. Philadelphia's Chautauqua Tennis Club was established in 1890 and hosted the first African-American interstate tournament in 1898. In 1915, what would become the Cosmopolitan Club opened in Harlem. In 1917, the Monumental City Tennis Club hosted the first ATA championship at the Druid Hill Park in Baltimore. And in 1920, Mrs. C.O. Seams from the Chicago Prairie Tennis Club purchased property on the south side of Chicago to build 4 tennis courts, making it the nation's first Black tennis club on privately owned land. These clubs were more than just outlets to play tennis. They laid the groundwork for community, inclusion, and access, and gave generations of players the chance to fall in love with the game.
Now, it is very impossible to quantify how many young Black girls have signed up for tennis lessons since the late 1990s when Serena and Venus burst onto the scene under the guidance of their father, Richard Williams, or how many parents of athletic Black girls living in America tried to follow his blueprint and repeat his success. Now, while this number is significant enough that despite barriers to entry, 2 generations of top Black female players, including Sloane Stephens, Taylor Townsend, and Coco Gauff, already at Grand Slam finalists of 18 have emerged. Now, in regards to Black American men, they have not had a Grand Slam champion again since Arthur Ashe in the late 1970s and had precious few Billboard-worthy top Black players to admire until Francis Tiafoe. Maybe one day they will have a Francis Tiafoe who is Black and played one of the most compelling matches in U.S. Open history last Friday to look up to and inspire young men such as the Williams sisters did. Now, even in his loss, Tiafoe, who was 24, announced himself last night as a transformative star. With the riches of far more accessible sports so obvious to young Black boys, the people trying to make Americans men's tennis better and more diverse have a steep hill to climb to overcome the void that has long existed. For example, Coco Gauff's younger brother is a teenage baseball prospect and is looking to play baseball. Now, Tiafoe has a long sort of magnetic appeal, especially among people of color. So this year's U.S. Open, when no spectators were on the grounds, in the 2020 U.S. Open, he played a second-round match against John Millman of Australia on quarter 11 that turned to a 5-set marathon. So as he began to climb out of a 2-1 deficit, about 100 maintenance, food, and security workers getting off their shifts at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center, who mostly were people of color, stood and watched him and began to fill up the stands and clap and cheer. So by the time he made his comeback on court 11, it was louder than any match that had ever came through there due to people supporting someone that looks like him. The U.S. Tennis Association has stated that finding kids who have athleticism and are great competitors and also have sound foundations needed to play tennis is rare, and they need that for the sport to grow. And this is from Kent Kenner, who's the director of the men's tennis division at the United States Tennis Association. Now, Kenner and his colleagues are desperate to reap the awards of an American man of any background winning the Grand Slam singles title for the first time since Andy Roddick did it in 2003. So private tennis coaches are scouring the country, looking for men of any race to create this new paradigm of American men's tennis. Now, John McEnroe always stated that what if you took basketball players and made them tennis players because they're long, they're athletic, they can move laterally, and they have good hand-eye coordination. So he used to always say, imagine if Michael Jordan played tennis or any other basketball player. And again, they reference the young women who often are drawn to tennis more than the young men. So Bill Adams, who runs Adams Global Tennis in Miramar, Florida, has worked with Naomi Osaka, who is Haitian. Her dad is from Haiti and her mom is from Japan, but she identifies as a black woman, and also said that they're right. They're trying to find this quote-unquote diamond in the rough. So sports like tennis and golf are less accessible to black children, again, because of the high cost of training and equipment and because of facilities to practice often aren't available in the communities where these people live. Now, black families typically have less wealth due to a myriad of reasons that we won't discuss here. And oftentimes they go into sports that are easier to play, soccer, football, basketball. Now, the United States Tennis Association is trying to set up a system that gives tennis a better chance to attract athletes from different sports, and especially from communities of color. They're starting to build courts and programs and equip them with rackets, balls, and tape, as well as some type of coaching. For example, Lewis Bowling is a former college player who's a community outreach manager with the United States Tennis Association. And he wants to be able to go down the street one day, he said, with rackets and shirts and get young kids to play. So in his program, he offers that, but on a very unique level. So similar to karate, he has different shirts of colors. So as you move up in progression, you get a different colored shirt. Now, hundreds of kids across Philadelphia have participated in this program, and the best have traveled across the city for tournaments. Now, Bowling, who was also of African descent, started playing tennis when he was 10 years old because his local baseball league folded. And by 15, he was traveling to Morocco and different places throughout the world to train and compete. Now, that is the environment that Aisha Roll was also trying to create in the South Bronx at her Carey Leeds Center for Tennis and Learning. Now, Roll grew up in Miami, Florida, 2 blocks from a park with a tennis set and basketball courts, and her brothers encouraged her to play tennis because the tennis courts were behind the basketball court, and they all would leave the house at the same time. So she began receiving daily lessons for $20 a week and took that into a career where she ultimately rose to number 82 in the world. But she doesn't want other young women or young girls getting their brothers to push them in that. She wants them to be excited about playing tennis. With that being said, the United States Tennis Association is working with 250 nonprofit organizations to provide access to tennis for about 160,000 players each year. Now, they recently announced that youth participation is rising, and what they count that as people that play tennis at least once a week. So by their numbers, it rose from 4.6 million in 2019 to 6.9 million in 2021. Now, within those numbers, participation among the ethnic groups that consider themselves Black or Hispanic grew to 5.5 million, which is an increase from 3.6 million. Now, most top players commit when they're very young, as by the time you're 8 years old, they want you to be fully fledged in the tennis. Now, they recently changed their stance and want children to play other sports outside of tennis so they can develop other athletic traits that will help them be better on the court, but they still need to teach tennis coaching techniques. Now, Elliot Petit is a senior director of strategic development, has tried to build a ladder that begins in elementary school while making tennis a part of gym class. So what he did was he partnered with local physical education teachers, and if you agree to do his tennis program in your class, the school gets a free package of equipment, which will be about 30 rackets, instructional balls, and tape to use as nets and chalk for lines. And you can line this up in the gym, the hallway, or the cafeteria. Many different places where you can get young men to play tennis. Now, in closing, I just like to use a reference from the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you really want people from the African diaspora to participate in tennis, you should create courts and areas that they play, provide instruction, and show that this is a means for advancement, whether it's on a collegiate level or professionally. Also, you must take some of the racism out. If you recall last week at the U.S. Open, during Serena Williams' farewell tour, many fans were quoted as talking about her presence. Again, we're doing the tired jokes relating African Americans to animals. You saw on Twitter the man Texan saying that when she loses, all the black people will leave. So we have to get that element out, and by flooding the market with tennis and individuals not only from the African diaspora but from Hispanic and other cultures of people of color. By everybody coming together, you basically can make it like the other sports, where there's so much diversity within the sport. Then when things like that happen, you'll have more than one ethnic group coming up and sticking by each other. So again, I would like to thank you for staying with me in this week's episode of Sports 101. Our show is entitled Coming to America, the Francis Tiafo story. Make sure you get social again with Sports 101 and the other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. SportsZone Chicago we find on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. And please don't forget to go to your favorite smart device and download SportsZone Chicago on Roku. Thank you for tuning in this week's episode of Sports 101. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. We'll be back next week on our normally scheduled time, Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I'm gone.